Hey guys, this is Josh back with another video, and today we're going to be discussing, well, I'm going to be discussing uh, general approaches in studying in poker. This video has been in pretty high demand for a while, so I figured I would address this. It's not such an easy answer, so giving a concise response is difficult, so I just decided to make, kind of a longer monologue on this. So I'm just going to start from how I got into poker, and then that will sort of help you guys understand kind of where I'm coming from when I give advice on this. So I got into poker in college, and I was introduced to the game through some other math majors on campus, and we were playing home games and such for very small stakes. But I just noticed how bad everyone was at the game and how clueless we all were. And so it sort of occurred to me, like, is there some trick I'm missing or whatever? I didn't realize at the time how complex the game was. But once you realize how big the game tree can get, it starts to make a lot of sense why everyone sucks, including like the best in the world. Compared to solvers, they are terrible actually. So yeah, it's sort of interesting in that sense. So shortly after, I started watching like some free YouTube content, and I started playing some live low stakes like 1-2 and 1-3, and shortly thereafter, I realized how lucrative the game could be if you figured out how to play well. So I paid for a Crush Live Poker subscription. I've talked about CLP in the past. I actually have only good things to say about Crush Live Poker, even though as far as like the content and I produce, it's pretty much like the polar opposite. But he does exactly what he advertises his instruction to do, which is crush live low stakes poker. I think he does it pretty well. There's going to be some spots certainly we disagree on, mostly pre-flop, but the live experience he has is pretty invaluable in my opinion. I think really he's the guy to listen to. So anyhow, I consumed quite a bit of that content and did really well in the live low stakes arena. I mean, it's kind of hard to fuck that up, but I mean, there's more variance live than a lot of people will lead on. But anyhow, I did well. And I was in school at the time, so that was pretty nice to be able to support myself for the most part. And so after about 4 or 5 months of that, I took a shot at micro stakes online, and I got crushed, like absolutely murdered. This song is annoying. Hold on, I'm gonna pause this. Okay, we're back. So let's see. Yeah, so after I took a shot at micro stakes online, I got crushed. Like the skill needed to be live 1-2 1-3 is like next to nothing. You just need to know how to play pre-flop. So I was pretty shit at poker at the time. So then I started playing live again just because I got burned out on online. It's just much less stressful. I'll just go play live. Even though I wanted to get good at the game, and I knew playing online was how to do that. So about a month later, I came across Zenith. I don't recall exactly how I came across it. I remember joining the Facebook group. That was like my first official interaction with Zenith. And then shortly thereafter, I signed up for an account on Zenith. Remember, it's all free. So I went through so here's what I recommend you do first, right? So you go through like there's a bunch of math topics you can go through in what is it? Introduction to Game Theory, I think is the module on the Zenith site. So what I recommend is going through the Alpha and Omega, the Ace King Queen games, the 0-1 games, and then the multi-way 0-1 games. I think the multi-way 0-1 game video is quite important. Yeah, and so then after that you can go through like the foundations of No Limit Hold'em course, and in that course you'll find a bunch of different overarching strategies on different flop textures, like paired boards, monotone boards, disconnected boards, that sort of thing. And Thomas does give many good explanations for a lot of flop and turn spots there. Now that's like my introduction to Zenith, and so after I went through all of that was sort of like while I was getting back into Microstakes Online, and like throughout that I was like I joined the Zenith Discord. I was watching some Zenith YouTube videos that were introducing me to a whole plethora of new theoretically sound topics. So that's really like the birth of me improving at poker. Like actually making progress, because learning how to exploit live players, it's not rocket science. So there wasn't a whole lot of complex poker thought going on in my head when I was playing live. So this was sort of the beginning of that. And so at that time I was playing 10NL on ACR. I started to break even there. A couple weeks goes by, I start to improve quite a bit results wise, and so I just said fuck it and started playing 25 Zoom on Ignition, and yeah, pretty much like straight away murdered that pool. I did run hot at the beginning, but like even over, I think it was like an 80,000 hand sample, I beat it for like, I mean, it wasn't impressive for 25 Zoom, but it was like I was impressed with myself. So it was like 8 bigs per 100, I think, and like 2 months prior, I was significantly losing at 10NL. So this was just, I was pretty ecstatic at the time, because I just thought I was doomed. I was like, I can't beat 10NL. This fucking sucks. So, but really, I just didn't have access to any good information. So, I played 25 Zoom for a couple months, whilst playing live on the weekends simultaneously. I was just playing 25, online, in between, homework and lectures and that sort of thing. And then, I built up a role on Ignition, over the course of a couple months, and then I started playing 50 Zoom, and then, yeah, so after that, I realized, like, I started beating 50 Zoom, and I realized that, this could, like, I noticed I had something going for me in terms of, I don't know if it's like talent or, I'm not really sure how to explain it, but more or less, I just knew I was pretty good, and I felt like I knew what I was doing in so many spots that other people didn't, and I mean, like it's really not just talent. A lot of it was just putting in the work, because in a lot of spots I'm clueless in. I just kind of think about my experiences in the past and a bunch of other spots, and I can usually come to some reasonable strategy, even if I have no idea what the spot looks like at equilibrium. And so, like, that was sort of an ability I developed. Uh, and so then I started to take poker more seriously, and you know, just diving more into the Zenith content. Um, yeah, while playing 50 is really where I got serious about poker. Then, um, so this was summer of 20. Well, let's see. I started playing 10 and L summer of 2019. And so like the fall semester is where I started to like see a lot of this improvement, and then like early spring of 2020 is where, you know, I was like definitively beating 50 Zoom and realized this could like uh, you know, this could blossom into something. So you know, I just started to dedicate a lot of time to study, neglected a lot of schoolwork, which, you know, I don't really regret it considering I'm a poker pro now. So it's, I mean, I graduated, I got my degree, um, but yeah, I did spend quite a bit of time studying, and a lot of it for me was like I really enjoyed studying. Even to this day, I sort of differ in the fact that like I enjoy studying more than I do playing. Um, I think I'm not sure if it's like a nerdy obsession I have with solvers or whatever, but I'm also pretty risk averse by nature, so like you know, the swings I don't necessarily deal with well, good or bad. Uh, so the main thing I want to address today is when studying poker, there's no linear roadmap to getting good. Um, so I get asked quite often, like, what's the best way to improve quickly? And there's just no good answer. Thomas has addressed this in videos before, but basically you need to take a breadth first instead of a depth first approach to studying poker. So what that means is just you need to get familiar with as many spots in the game tree as possible, especially the ones that come up the most often. Um, because the more spots you're familiar in, the less spots you're just going to be torching money inadvertently. Uh, and so it's really important to just get a broad idea. And then that will help you sort of develop an intuition in a lot of spots you haven't looked at yourself. Um, so instead of like spending an inordinate amount of time figuring out how often Jack four of spades check raises on a given board texture, like who gives a fuck? Like no one is gonna know how often you check raise that combo. No one's gonna be able to exploit you for that. So um, if you know how to make slight exploitative adjustments in game, you'll figure out that like how often you check raise a given combo isn't so important. But turn and river play will be quite important. I mean, it's important to balance your ranges in a lot of spots, but as Early Peleg has said in the past, like there's typically a definitively better choice, and I would tend to agree with that, especially on turns and rivers. Like RNGing the flop is pretty good, just because you want to make sure you can have all sorts of different strength hands and all sorts of different lines. Like if you just your check raise, you know, a double backdoor hand, you're not going to have nearly as many backdoor flushes in your back call line. So it's pretty easy to exploit that. But like on later streets, that isn't going to be so important. So just because exploitation becomes more difficult. And it, like the mistakes, if you make a mistake on the flop, it's going to compound on turns and rivers, whereas like if you make a mistake on the river, it's only a mistake in that one spot. That's an oversimplification of the spot. Anyhow, I don't want to like go down a rabbit hole. I'm trying to stay on script here. See, I forgot where I was. Let's see. Okay, so yeah, just take a breadth first approach to poker. So this is gonna feel like a lackluster approach, and it's not always gonna feel like the most organized or like fulfilling, because you think, well, like, why am I studying small blind flats when like I don't even know how to c-bet hijack versus big blind? And it's like that's just not the way to go about it. Like, if you have access to good sims on a spot you're not familiar with, you should just eat that shit up. It doesn't matter how skilled you are or whatever, because like somewhere down the line, that's gonna come up, and you're gonna have some idea of what to do, given that you like process the information. So just like consuming as much as possible, like as much breadth as possible, is pretty important. At least it was for me. So I didn't address like the rest of like my journey to where I got here. It's not so important, but basically I just climbed through the stakes from 50 zoom, 100 NL, 200 NL, 200 zoom, 500 and 500 zoom. So I started playing 10 NL in October of 2019, and so you know, I started shot taking 500 in November. So like a little over a year from 10 NL to 500. I mean, that's a pretty good pace, but I really can't stress enough how it was like. I think I have a pretty like I'm problem solving minded, so to speak. So I think poker is a pretty good game for me, but I really can't stress enough how like I'm not like some less talent or anything. Like, I really had to work at this, and I consider myself like pretty smart and things like that. But again, I worked my ass off to get here, and yeah, like honest, like I'm not joking. Without Zenith, I very likely would not be playing poker, or if I was, I'd just be like grinding 1-3 live or some shit like that. I'd probably be no. What I would be doing is like trying to land a software job. I mean, that was my original plan, and then I just said fuck this, and now I'm playing poker. So yeah, I like this a lot better than a day job. I'll say that. Let's see. Let's see. I always get off topic in these monologue videos. Yeah, so after you go through after you finish going through like the foundations of No Limit Hold'em on the different flop textures on the Zenith site, then you can start going through like Zenith and I's YouTube channels. We address a bunch of broad topics, some more specific than others, but you'll find all sorts of stuff. And then, you know, while you're doing that, you can take some of the range construction quizzes on the Zenith site. And then there will be answer tutorials either on my channel or Zenith's channel, do those quizzes. And once you get like a broad idea of it, like this is going back to breadth as opposed to depth, right? Like you want to get an overarching idea of a lot of spots and frequencies, and once you do that, then you can like start to delve into the range construction with the quizzes. But don't try to do it all at the same time. Like, you're not going to learn how to like block probe the turn and figure out exactly which hands go into that size at the same time. Like, it's just too much information. So leave that stuff to the construction quizzes. I mean, the quizzes address so many different spots. You'll get there eventually. Now to address like some miscellaneous stuff. So like when it comes to using solvers, if you're more of a beginner, I highly recommend to just leave it to the experts. I mean, especially if you're familiar with Zenith, I don't see any reason. If you've never used a solver, I don't know why you're doing it yourself, unless you've like had coaching on how to use solver, or you've watched like some of Zenith's videos on how to build good trees and so on. Unless you've done that, you're bound to fuck it up. Because don't put yourself through that pain, because you're going to make mistakes. Which, I mean, mistakes are good. It's just you're gonna end up running a bunch of shit sims and like pulling terrible conclusions. And just leave it to the pros. There's bunches of different ways to get good sims. Yeah. Yeah, using Pio or solvers in general or using them effectively is quite difficult. So you'll see like videos of me breaking down different spots. It took a lot of time to figure out how to pull like reasonable conclusions out of solvers, because like the ace high video I did yesterday, I mean that's not an easy thing to spot. Like especially when you like check down a flush draw turn and you have like ace queen of spades after the turn was like a spade draw. It's you're just gonna like look at the solver and like if you're more of a beginner, you're gonna have no idea why the ace queen of spades bets the river. And like for example, a newer player might say, oh, so you just like bluff ace high here, or you bluff missed flush draws, when it really has nothing to do with that. So yeah, as far as like using solvers effectively, try to do it in either a coaching format or a tutorial format, or watch other people explain solves. So that's what I'd recommend if you're more of a beginner. If you're more experienced with solvers, my advice would be slightly different. But again, if you don't know why a solver is doing something, try not to make any assumptions for yourself unless you like really explore the spot. Like on the ace high video I made, I went through many different flops quite in depth and made sure I wasn't just like pulling stuff out of my ass. And if I like make an assertion, I'm quite confident that's the case. So like when I develop a heuristic, I can be quite confident that I'm not just blowing smoke up my ass, and the strategy and the heuristic seems to be good. Now the last question I want to address is, should I hire a coach? And this is going to be different for everybody, because like, let's say there's different uses for a coach, right? So let's say you just finished playing like 100,000 hands at low stakes, like 25 NL or something, and you want to do like a database review. That would be a great opportunity to hire a coach for a session. But really, until you consume a lot of the content available to you, I wouldn't strongly recommend a coach, because it's likely that your resources could be spent on something better, like buying early access from Zenith. Like when I recommend stuff from Zenith, Thomas doesn't pay me to say any of this stuff. I'm just saying this because like I promote his channel and his site for free, because he took me from 10 NL to 500 Zoom for next to nothing. I paid for early access, and I paid for like a couple coaching sessions from him. Well, several coaching sessions from him, but like he's not paying me anything to promote a site. Like literally, to accomplish what Thomas did for me, from anyone else would have cost me like thousands and thousands of dollars. So I don't mind doing this free promotion for him. Now, yeah, your resources could be spent on something better, like buying early access from Zenith or buying Thomas's book. I'd say, like, in my opinion, the early access from Zenith is just like quite invaluable, given it has tons of sims. So like a lot of this, see, the sims from last year I think are publicly available now for free. So if you haven't checked that out, go check that out. Let's see, not exactly sure what's in the Zenith library. Okay, so he has. Okay, so he hasn't uploaded the new sims yet, but he will in the near future, I believe. But you know what Thomas does is like he'll run a bunch of sims over the course of a year, or whatever projects he's working on, such as his book, and you can get early access to those things, you know, for a price. I don't recall exactly what it is. It's like what an average coaching session would be, or something like that. And then you get a year early access to all of those things, and then after the year is up, he just releases all of it to the public for free. So that's sort of like his business model. And then you can buy coaching from him, of course, as you can myself on the Zenith site. Yeah, so then the main function of a coach is to help you think about the game in a more structured and efficient way. So like, the biggest thing I got from talking to other pros is they just explained a lot of spots that didn't make a lot of sense to me, and like I think about this quite often. So there's this one spot where you know, I ran this sim, so it's a low jack versus big blind single raise pot on a paired board. I don't remember the board, but in position was c-betting like at a decent frequency, and then out of position was continuing almost purely as a raise or fold. So it was calling like 10% of its range, and then, you know, folding like 60% and raising like 30% or something ridiculous. And so I was thinking, like, this makes absolutely no sense. I don't know why this is the case. So I asked Thomas, and he was like, well, on pair boards, when the low jack opens, the big blind is going to call a range much higher in density of pairs, like pocket pairs. So on extremely dry paired boards, the big blind is going to flop a polar range, where the big blind will have tons of like air and ace high, and then like pairs which are quite strong in a paired board. So when he explained it that way, the reason big blind continuing like almost purely as a check raise makes a lot of sense. And so that's sort of the structuring of my thought process that ended up helping me a lot. And it's really just through talking in the Discord, and, you know, obviously paying for coaching sessions. And so like the earlier on you do that, the better. But there's sort of like this balance you have to obtain of like, would my resources be better spent on A, B, or C? And sometimes yes, sometimes no. So if you're unsure, I would ask someone. I mean, I'd recommend asking a pro and just kind of tell them a little bit about yourself. Feel free to ask me. I'll give you an honest answer. So yeah, I think that's most of what I wanted to address in today's video. But the main takeaway should be, Studying poker is not going to feel organized. It's going to feel quite confusing at times. There's no like straight roadmap. And let's see, well, what is another main takeaway? Like coaching, well, coaching can be for players at all stakes. It just depends on sort of your background at the time and like what you're trying to accomplish. And then make sure you spend adequate time on theoretical content. It's tempting to just like figure out the c betting strategy on a monotone board, sort of like, you know, board A, B, or C. But the more you learn about like, you know, theory and math, like the better it's just going to serve you in a lot of different spots. And especially when you start to dive deep into solvers, it's going to make your life a lot easier as to why, like, you know, you see certain bet sizings on different textures and things like that. So, yeah, I think that's most of what I wanted to address today. There's inevitably going to be questions, like follow-up questions to this video. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section or feel free to message me on Discord. If there's something I didn't specifically address, I might make a follow-up video, but yeah, I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say today. Yeah, so thanks for watching.